Hello, Andrew here, and welcome to Lecture 7 of the Designing Digital Content in Youth Work module. This is the practical where I'm going to cover some introductory things around audio production, like computer-based audio production, and just mostly to look at how sounds can be generated online, and also introduce you to this really interesting piece of free live coding music software, which is a really fun thing to introduce to a group of young people that might have some sort of interest in music production or anything along those lines. And they're learning how to code at the same time, but mostly it's just the interface, as we'll get to it in a minute, where the number of tutorials built in, giving this really intuitive way to learn it in a fun manner while you're going about it. So I just want to introduce you to that first. So if we go to this Sonic Pi website, this is what we're looking at here. So it's a piece of live coding basically for music, which updates in this sort of a really fun way that, as well as composing music and learning the computation of it, you're learning how to, almost performance that it has the capacity to do this live as well. So as I said, I'm not going to labor too much on this because the tutorials are so useful, and I just want to show you some of the constructs of it really. And then in the second lecture on audio editing, I will take on another piece of freeware. Again, another powerful one in a different direction. Because a lot of the audio editing technologies, is quite a crossover with the interface and how things work with the video editing. So I didn't think it merited two projects, and I thought it would be a good idea just to introduce this one instead. So yeah, if you go to this website, there's a whole community of different examples of different uses going on with it. If we just look here, basically what we're seeing here is this 4 lines of code, well, 2 essentially. One with a loop due at the beginning and one with an end, which just shows that it's going to keep running. And in between there's like a sample, a sample's being called, and then a certain rate of how that's going to perform is called, and then just a bit of a pause between it before it reloads. That's all we're really looking at there. So I just want to show that this is a really powerful computational thing when it comes to generating sounds in audio. And it gets a real understanding of how digital sound works, or MIDI signals work, and these things that you go as far as another piece of software called Pure Data, where it's literally code base underneath all of it. It would have emerged out of generating sounds much like Sonic Pi, but also kind of goes a lot further to just incorporate it into images and having that sort of, images moving to sound, or sound interacting with an image, and this different sort of interpretation where the code is essentially the same at the base. That's all I'm trying to kind of really get across here. The code is the same at the base, and it's literally a case of what you want to do with it. So this is kind of a really nice introduction to a lot of those things. So you see it slightly more sophisticated in terms of the length of it. We get introduced to different effects, like a reverb effect and things that you can kind of start hearing after a while, and just all this being applied to each into each note in kind, really. So okay, not to kind of get too bamboozled with this, because as I said, the tutorials are really handy when you get kind of going on it. And again, it's one of those things to kind of follow up from the last the lectures that are kind of running concurrently with this section. This is a really good tool to just give to young people with an interest in, where you don't actually have to do the learning. You just have to stay one step ahead of them, essentially, and it's quite a fun way to do that, really. So I'm just going to open the software that I've downloaded. If I can move this, that'd be great. I'll just resize this. So once we get the software downloaded, this is the interface that we're presented with, which kind of has everything we want in it. And all these different buffers are just different windows where you can load up different pieces of code and then run them and have them all running concurrently. So I have a few things in here at the moment where I'll just see if I can zoom out of this one. There we go. Okay, so again, this is just a small sample from one of the tutorials that I would have taken off. I'll just give you. So I've just altered the change to the amplitude of that long bass boom there, and then I'll run it again, and then at the next update, it will begin to run it, and there's the completed run too, and we'll hear the sound kicking in. If I like that to sleep only for one again, so it will just match with the rest of them because it's still working on a delay. Runs again, 3. Okay, so, that's as far just to kind of show how quickly you can generate sound, and just the fidelity of the sound is really, probably the best you can get in terms of coming off the code end of it as well. There's a whole set of different effects, but this is the most interesting part I want to look at. As I said, there's different examples here that you can call on, and it's just different people have loaded this up, and this chord inversion. Let me see what's let me see what we can open for a minute. Sam Aaron, Monday Blues. So Sam Aaron has compiled this piece of software. So again, we're just going to copy and paste is all you really need to know at the moment with this. You get it in, and then you can kind of run it off and see. This is a very... Okay, so sorry, I thought there was an audio track going to kick in there just by looking at it. So any number of examples there, but I want to concentrate on, again, there's different plugins and different effects that you can have. All is explained. Again, like everything else, you don't need to know all of this. You just need to be in a playful and positive sort of frame of mind when you go at it, and just to see how it's going to work. And it gives you all the different sort of profile of what the specs that you'd need to do to replicate a certain sort of sound, which is handy. But this is all we need to worry about here, okay? So we look at the Welcome to Sonic Pi, 2 synths, 3 samples, 4 randomization, 5 programming structures, 6 effects, 7 control, 8 data structures, 9 live coding, 10 time states, 11 MIDI, different ins and outs of MIDI, and OAC receiving different file types basically that we're looking at, which is OAC would relate to like pure data and different forms of it really, where you're looking at, as we would have discussed with the, almost like the codecs with video files or whatever, where there's a base to it, a root of a certain sort of file type that will work in different programs essentially. Multi-channel audio, taking sounds in and out of it, conclusions, and then an appendix. Okay, so that's the whole, and then any number of examples of how to build certain things, how to play around with it, different sort of effects to do. So this is a really, I'm just going to start right at the start to just show you how small these lessons actually are. I'll see if I can. So this is all we're looking at for one lesson, so 1.1, where it's literally a case of a live loop. So let's get started. Let's throw this straight in to a different buffer window, and we just throw that in there and run it. We have a syntax error. Wonderful. Let me see, what have I done? And it tells me what I've done. End nick. Oh, it's this nick pi thing came in from elsewhere where we don't need that. We just need to end. That's all we need to do. Have I BD house sample? Let me see where that sample's coming from. We should hear a nice fast safe. Why aren't we hearing that? We're not hearing that because I'm missing the top line of the code. So I see it's up here. It came in the wrong place. Again, much like with the editing and everything else we would have discussed, you know, I'm happy enough to leave these sorts of problems in where you can see me trying to figure out, because I've actively come at this with little kind of understanding with some of them, just to show how easy it is to kind of access a lot of this stuff, you know, and kind of get stuck into it straight away. So let's see. So we have that in. We press run on that. So there's your 4/4 beat, which, you know, anyone with an interest in electronic dance music or whatever, straight away you'll have your attention with this. So if we want to change the ambi, let me see. So let's add something else into the mix. So you've got an ambi choir thing at a rate of that. So simply we're inserting different lines into the code. And again, likewise, you know, this is all stuff that you're learning how to code essentially, and just learning how to debug it, or how to look at different sort of syntaxes and grammars which aren't in English and aren't musical as such. But so there's a difference in between. So if I run this, it'll take over straight away and we'll see the update. Do another one of this. So we're just seeing how layered we can get it straight away. Okay, so, you know, I'm not going to go massively further than this, really. I just want to kind of give you an introduction to this, because it's a really versatile way around this. Play with sounds. That's one sort of whole tutorial there, which is basically just playing with this straight away and just hitting run, stop, telling you exactly what to do with the commands at the top here as you read through it, throwing it in and seeing how you go. And then we just get something a bit more advanced and see what we have here. I'm just going to throw that in on top of this and see what it'll do. Okay, so exploring the interface. It gives you the whole breakdown of what you need to know about that. All the different playheads, all the different controllers, where you're getting the info from. It's a really nice graphic interface that they have here. So, you know, I'm doing it a disservice by kind of trying to relay that back to you. But again, all as I would say, this is a really interesting introduction to this type of grammar of seeing how, you know, code can look, or how you can kind of play around with these sorts of things. When it gets into live performance and stuff like this, where there's all sorts of different sort of effects that you can like, or have it overlaid over other things. So if you're playing live and you've got video mixers or different things like this, there's all different ways to kind of put it together. Any number of MIDI devices to be connected and get into full sort of musical composition. taking inputs from live instrumentation and mixing them live and putting them back out, recording them separately, or just saving it off somewhere else, or loading previous ones elsewhere, you know. This is what I was looking for earlier, the size where it's the plus and the minus that I had. And you got the scope. So there's a lot of kind of interface stuff here. And then into synths, let's see, we'll just do a really basic synth and see what happens. So there we go. So you're really getting into, you know, some sort of basic sort of introduction to how sound works. And then here is really interesting where it links straight away to, like, you know, the number 60 being, you know, the equivalent of a C note. And then we can, you know, all this will swap out very quickly, almost like piano keys. And we got this sort of synth sound that can go with it. We can have a delay to kind of play them one after the other. We can play them faster. And then here we are into like using C and E and different sort of traditional music notation, which again is a really interesting way to be learning musical instrumentation or notation at the same time as kind of getting introduced to a different type of grammar like code, learning to debug it when it's not working, and doing all this in a live sort of performance environment. And again, like I said, we're not even looking at, so let's see if there's any samples that we can do. You can pull in all sorts of different samples, or you can make your own samples, as we'll see from the video editor or the audio editing in the next project, where there will be different samples that we want to kind of introduce. And again, here's the list of ones that we can call for the moment. But you can create your own samples and import them, and then you have it kind of stored somewhere on your machine, and then upload them whenever. So, you know, it kind of, it's really open-ended and really intuitive way of kind of learning to kind of pull a lot of things together and get very dynamic with sound and programming languages simultaneously. And I couldn't recommend it enough, really. And if it was this, the opportunity to kind of present something like this to you, to kind of show to other young people that might have an interest or kind of, you know, labor something with the audio editing, I thought this was certainly worth kind of looking at. So I would recommend that. I'm going to put up the links for this as well, but I hope that you find this sort of useful or interesting, or mostly just, you know, something you could quickly work through and get a kind of good idea of it, and see if it was any use or purpose to your young people in your organizations. That's pretty much it for this lecture. Next one, I'm going to look at this other software, Audacity, which is a bit more traditional sort of, we'll get to that in the next lecture. But anyway, it'd be more traditional audio editing and production. So between these two things, you've got two very, very powerful freeware open source programs for audio editing and audio production. Highly recommended. That's pretty much it. Please drop me an email if you have any questions about any of this or anything that needs discussing, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Okay, thanks, bye.